Welcome to TradeTheNBA.com. This is John. This report is for, well, it's the beginning of a new month, April Fool's Day. What a way to start a Monday. We'll see if the market's able to fool us on this one. It was a fairly decent Friday. Started above the ABM yellow and just maintained itself. There's not a whole lot of anything between here and moving all the way back up to that 2866 range, except for the fact that you just have soft readings. You did get the cyan below green, and green now rising above zero. Well, right at zero. I expect that depending on what the open is for futures, maybe right in there. So this is kind of a soft period. You don't really have a strong motivation where you're like, here the DOC dip, or we've reached an extreme point. So this can go back and forth, particularly from the daily. So not too concerned about it either way. We did get almost a positive extreme. So that will be an interesting one to see start out, because if we do get a little bit of elevation and it automatically moves into positive extreme, that could signal that we have a temporary bump before there's going to be a little bit of backfill. And in beginning of the month, we still need a few more days before new fund money would come in towards the middle part of the week. From the NASDAQ standpoint, still it's been stronger than the S&P the whole way through, with the cyan underneath red the whole time, which is always a buy, and there's really been no deviation from that. It came close. We're starting to get a little bit of a flattening up, but now we're getting a little rejection of green to the cyan. So clearly still indicating a stronger move, and this is what we were talking about, that reset of the shakeout, and we produced a higher bar on the return. So that suggests that we could get another run-up. So it looks like the NASDAQ will be leading whether or not we take a forward push. And of course, here we have our lovely euro. And it's still working to fill in the dip below the red line from back over here. So it's getting close. It's taking a little while. A nice up move. The bread exit continues to be a disaster where, if you believed that your vote would matter in Britain, you were mistaken. The shock. It's overwhelming people. They just had no idea. Gold, I know, it's just worth a laugh because it's so comical. It's filled back in pretty close to that retrace of the dip below the red lines right back here from the extreme. So that's almost fulfilled itself. And it created a new dip, so this could be in for a little more trouble. Now, if it dips back down a little bit further and makes the higher extreme, then we can look for the potential for a nice turnaround pop. We'll see. Intraday was pretty benign. We started out from that continuation of the gold rising off of, that was a good call from well into Thursday. That beautiful dip, and it just, boom, took off, piece of cake. And then we ended up with some modest, Celsius really didn't do a whole lot. I mean, my gosh, it just came through. You had that crossover, boom, the turnaround point, but could never get a strong move of DOC red to break into a new zone level. In fact, it just kept making lower and lower peaks right there until it finally reset itself, creating a decent crossover buy from that configuration. And then we ended up with gold right around the 50% in a soft patch here, which obviously turned around right at the dip where the steel then crossed above, and that also was pretty blah until it finally broke up a little bit later in the day and also created the same kind of DOC spreads right at the zero. This tend to have a little bit more juice. This didn't have a whole lot, just went right back to the 50%, but the range had become so narrow. Didn't even make it back to the algo. And this is what we had been playing. We had this 2819 all the way to the 30, got it back above 30, came back to it, dipped a little below it, and they brought it right back to it. And we just kind of traced this point of accumulation was taking place at that particular point, especially from what we see from the daily signal. If we look at it from the deal campaign 2, the adjusted one, we had that huge rally run, then we had the decline, and then it pretty much stayed with this I guess you would call it just a week-long signal. Tough because it's constantly moving. It's one of those where you're trying to play it tight with stops, and it's just not going to work. When the market narrows in a range like this from what we're seeing from those DOC readings, you just have to give it more breath to do its thing. And in this particular case, it was just a slow to the upside. Certainly, when you get up near those 100%, taking a gain from a DOC spread setup, I don't have any objection to those. Kind of calls us just looking for a bit more of a long-term run. If we look at it from a mid-range 50K, we had talked about at the previous buy there, did it again, and it's actually doing fairly decent from that 28.13. That's okay. Nothing to complain about there, but working pretty effectively. It was interesting because you ended up with the turnaround in the green and then immediately retraced in the little ABC setup, and then boom, took off from there. So all in all, decent action. It's going to be a fun way to start the month. I actually have a few more adjustments that were almost done, but I need to complete some testing on them before I can give them to you right at the start. But I'll get those out to you as soon as I have that completed, and I think that will even add to the clarity of it. And the idea being is that we're taking these 5Ks and we're going to be able to convert more active trade in the sense of following trend without every little teeny variation in the DOC causing impact. And it just depends on your preference. You still have the ability to do more detailed adjustment, or go with the more subtle strategy from the Deocon paint that just allows it to sort of kind of breathe, so to speak. As always, though, trade well. I will keep putting up on the Skype chat. I had a horrible time with it on Friday. I had to remove, reinstall, blah, 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 blah. It's the same old story. You don't want to hear it. But it's back up and we're all set. So we'll talk again later, and trade well.